All right, let's go out to Las Vegas again. Andy Iskoe with Gaming Today. Andy, thanks for joining us today. How are you?
Jimmy, it's a pleasure to be with you, and every day that passes by, we are hopefully one day closer to sports resuming.
Yeah, no kidding. Any thoughts? I mean, you're an Ivy League grad. I mean, Ivy League, again, just canceling the entire fall season. In Stanford, also canceling 11 sports. Anything to be concerned about?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, I was reading, I think it was one of the articles this morning that talked about the Ivy League canceling their football season and other winter sports, and the Ivy League has been sort of at the forefront of a lot of things in recent years. I believe that league was the first to ban tackling during practice. They were the first league this past March to cancel their postseason basketball tournament, and within a couple of days, everything else got canceled. So I hope this is not a forerunner of major programs canceling their football seasons. However, I would not be surprised if at least one, if not a few more, of the 130 FBS teams do not have a full season, do not have a season this year, and if there are other teams that may not have 12-game scheduled seasons as we plan. Hopefully that's the worst-case scenario, because it means we would be at least getting some good football through probably September, at least through Thanksgiving. But as you know, this is a very fluid situation. It changes almost hour to hour or day to day. And, if we can go back to where we were at the end of May when things seemed to be under control before they started up again, we could be more encouraged.
One of the kind of the new things in college football is what they sort of that week 0. Now, they gave us a really good game last year in Miami and Florida. But I'm looking at the week 0 games this year, and a lot of them are out on the West Coast near you guys. And I don't know. I mean, I just feel like the desire level is not quite maybe what it is maybe in Southeastern Conference country where we are over there. But get us caught up to date on that, and also where is Vegas? How is the new Vegas? Some of the new normal, whatever, to the with the restart of the NBA, NHL, and baseball just around the corner. We hope.
Yeah, there's a little bit more uncertainty, of course, with the football, because those are the two sports, college and pro football, that are furthest in the distance right now. And so there's a lot more information coming out, lines going up, odds being posted as far as the other three sports, the resumption of the NBA, the resumption of the NHL, and, of course, Major League Baseball. That's the one that is expected to start the first of the major sports with that opening night doubleheader. Was it 2 weeks? 2 weeks from tomorrow, I believe, the 23rd of July, with the Dodgers and Giants playing in the second half and the Yankees at Washington in the first half. So we're starting to see lines for the first weekend of baseball. We're starting to see some props up. Season win totals have gotten a lot of interest in the early going. Just taking a look, for example, at some of the season wins, if you'd like to start there. Let me call that up on the computer. We've got the World Series odds as well. It's a little slow here today, but there's been a lot of excitement as far as that initial matchup. Garrett Cole for the Yankees going up against Max Scherzer of the Nationals, the defending World Series champions, which, by the way, keep in mind that, if I recall correctly, the Nationals, who went on to win the World Series, were 27-33 after the first 60 games. So that's a little bit of something to take into mind when you're considering making some futures bets, is that you may see some teams that struggle early in the past able to overcome that. They may not be able to overcome that this year. And in fact, one of the things I am considering is whether managers will approach the baseball season as games 1 through 60, trying to get off to that quick start, or will they approach it as games 103 to 162, meaning it's the start of August, we're tied for the lead, let's play the best baseball coming on out to the end of September, the final game of the season. So the Dodgers right now, the Yankees, those are the two favorites to win it overall. But looking at some of the season win totals, the Yankees are at 37. That would be 37-23. There's a prop. What will be the most number of games won by any team this year? That prop opened up at 39.5. Didn't matter what team, just that any team would win over 39.5. That's been bet up to 41.5 I believe it's the correct move, but I believe the value has been taken out of the over. Just to put it in perspective, a 40-20 record is the equivalent of basically 108-54 over a full season. That's a good season. It's not unprecedented, but once you start asking for a record that's the equivalent of a full season of 110 wins, where we're at right now, or 111 right now if you do the math, that's asking a bit too much. But the Dodgers right now are the team that does have the highest individual win total. That's at 38.5. It's lower because here you're trying to pick a specific team to win a specific number of games. The 41.5 that currently exists, any of the 30 teams has to go over that for the over to cash.
Andy, a couple of things. Do the schedule, which is more geographically inclined, like the Mariners get it really tough, and some other West Coast teams in the American League. Of all teams, the Cincinnati Reds they're playing the Pirates and Tigers a little bit more. The Marlins are playing teams, that, gosh, they've got, 80% of their games against teams with winning records last year. How much does the new schedule affect your thoughts, your approach on these win totals? And also, because you don't have a trade deadline, and the good teams, cherry picking the best players from the weaker teams, and the gap widens, and the lines get higher. Do you think do you think teams are going to be closer to 500 on both ends? Your thoughts?
Well, I think there'll be some teams that will surprise early on. In fact, you mentioned one of the teams that's one of the more popular teams. Everybody seems to be on it that the odds now don't really justify a play on the Cincinnati Reds, but that's a team that even going into what would have been a full 162-game schedule appeared to be a team that was very much on the rise. When I'm looking at a short season, I'm looking at relatively longer-priced teams that have strong bullpens and decent enough, if not outstanding, or certainly very good starting pitching. One team that comes to mind in the National League is the San Diego Padres. They're not going to beat the Dodgers out for the NL West, but they certainly can do enough over a 60-game schedule to get in there as a wild card. And once you're in there as a wild card, anything can pretty much happen. You do have to play that one-game play-in to join the other three division winners. But San Diego is a team that I've had my eye on as benefiting from this short season. And in the American League, the team that I've liked also in the off season, leading into whether it would have been a full season or the shortened season, the Chicago White Sox. Now, you mentioned a couple of teams that have relatively easy schedules. I do my analysis not on the records of the teams last year, but the projected total wins for this year to measure up what they think the teams are going to be this year. And the American League Central, which the Twins, the Indians, the Royals, the Tigers, and the White Sox, I wouldn't be surprised if that division produces the two wild cards in addition to the division winner, because of the fact that you do have two of the teams with the lowest win totals in Kansas City and Detroit. And the other three teams in that division are going to play those Tigers and Royals. Each will play them 20 games out of the 60-game schedule. They'll play they'll play the other 20 games against the two other better teams in the division. And then, of course, they'll be playing the National League Central, where you have a couple of teams that are expected to be weak, most specifically the Pittsburgh Pirates. So when I'm looking at playing futures, I'm very much looking at the schedule dynamics of it as who you play, basing it on this year's projected wins totals, and also considering the fact that when you're looking at wild cards, more games are going to be important inside your division. The Yankees, for example, are not going to be playing any teams from the American League Central or the American League West as they do in a full season. So therefore, the games that they play against other teams in their division, most notably the Tampa Bays and the Boston Red Sox, those are going to be the games that are going to count even more this year. So there may be some teams that I would think will surprise both on the positive side, and there might be some teams, and I'll be interested in the Houston Astros, for example. Yeah, they're not going to have to deal with the crowds of road teams heckling the cheating that they have been basically proven guilty of over the last few years. But you wonder, because everyone's looking at Houston as having this outstanding offense, which they do. The pitching staff is weakened because there's no Garrett Cole this year. But will the offense be able to produce, A, with the pressure of showing that it wasn't due to the cheating, or B, perhaps not producing because a lot of their success was due to the cheating?
And it's Ben Metz here. My question is for the Vegas odds makers. A 60-game season instead of 162. Seems like anarchy could happen. I mean, baseball, that's a small sample size. How have the Vegas odds maker adjusted with the big favorites? Because it seems like it makes it a lot tougher for them in the short season.
Yeah, we haven't really seen much as far as the schedule going out beyond just the first weekend. But when you look at some of the future book odds for this season for the pennant and the World Series, you do see some unusual prices because of the effect that I talked about, the fact that within your own league, you're only playing 4 other of the 14 other teams, like I mentioned with the Yankees not playing the 10 teams from the AL Central and AL West. Same thing for example, the Mets in the National League. They're not going to be playing teams from the NL Central or the NL West. So you, for example, have the current odds for a team like the Mets to win the National League pennant as low as 8-1. You've got Washington at 9-1. You've got Atlanta at 8-1. So you've got 3 very competitive teams, and those are the 3 lowest teams in the National League to win the National League pennant, aside from the Dodgers, who are a very strong 5-4 favorite. So you see a lot of short price teams. In fact, looking at the National League, you only have 4 really long shots to win the National League pennant. Colorado and Pittsburgh at 100-1, San Francisco and Miami at 150-1. The other 11 teams are all priced at 25-1 or less, and in fact, of the other 11 teams, 9 of them are priced at 15-1 or less. So it looks like we could see a season, albeit 60 games, with some really very good teams and some really very, very bad teams, because you won't have teams outside your division that you normally would have been able to beat up on that you're not going to be able to, and that's where a lot of the weaker teams get the bulk of their 65 to 80 wins during the course of the season.
Andy Iskoe with us. Andy, what numbers are you looking at the Westgate Superbook for the Padres and White Sox over?
Okay, let me get back to that one here. The Padres,
we were showing what,
win
30 and a half?
30 and a half on the Padres is what I saw. I like that over, too.
Yeah, I'm trying to see where that okay, yeah, Padres are currently at 30 and a half. That's where they open. That's where they are. And the White Sox are at 31 and a half. Again, they're in that American League Central with Minnesota and Cleveland also competitively priced. In fact, Minnesota is at 30 and Cleveland is at 32 and a half. So really, it's Cleveland, White Sox, Minnesota in that order, even though I believe Minnesota 34 and a half. So it's Minnesota, Cleveland, then Chicago, and then the big drop-off to Kansas City and Detroit. So the White Sox would have to go 32 and 28. This is a team that has been building over the last couple of years, and I wouldn't be surprised if they present a bigger challenge to Minnesota within the division than Cleveland does. I think Cleveland is a team, they've made some moves over the past year or so that tells me that they are declining, and within another year or so will be in rebuilding mode.
I was in Petco last year, man, and I was able to watch Tatis Jr. in person, and that left side of the infield with him and Machado as good as anybody.
Oh, I love that.
Really,
I love
really
that stadium
impressive.
And that wall. Maybe be getting a few more baseballs hit off it this year. Padres are a fun team to watch. They had, I don't remember what the time frame was, but their bullpen was lights out for a good part of last season.
Andy, any picks for the golf tournament that's going this weekend? Are you getting into more of the golf or the soccer or the MMA or anything, the stuff that's been going on in Vegas?
The MMA or the soccer, but I have been into somewhat a bit of the NASCAR and certainly the golf on a week-to-week basis. I know that one of the guys that I had last week who has been close, he's played well, but he hasn't really cracked the elite top 5 to top 8, and that's Victor Hovland, who is one of those young players along with Colin Morikawa, Matthew Wolff, a lot of the young players that we've seen develop over the past a year or so. Those are the guys you want to take a look at. I'll be interested to follow this week. I haven't seen the latest odds on someone like Brooke Koepka, who was supposed to make his debut last week and had
he's 12-1. It's 12-1.
Yeah, that sounds about right, and it's what I'll be looking at this week is how the players perform, because the tournament the next week is going to be at the same venue, the Memorial Jacks tournament, right. And so if you're playing the same course, they'll make some adjustments, but they can't make too many adjustments. So I'll be taking a close look at the scorecards of the golfers to see where they struggle and where they particularly excel, because it's extremely rare. I can't remember the last instance of where they played the same course in back-to-back weeks.
Oklahoma State Cowboy Victor Hovland is one of my four to win it all at 22-1, and straight up against John Rahm in the matchup tomorrow. We got a lot of stuff we'll talk to you about in the future, man. We appreciate it, Andy. Thanks so much, man. Great stuff. We'll talk to you soon.
Jimmy, it's been a pleasure. I'll look forward next week.
All right, Andy Iskoe from Gaming Today, man.